How did somebody you know ruin their life in one day? Story 1. In college, my ex's friend was pulled over for speeding. He had drugs and alcohol in his system, and when the cop reached in his truck to grab the keys, he panicked and took off, thinking the cop would let go. The cop did not let go, and was dragged for quite a ways before eventually falling to the ground and hitting his head, resulting in his death. My ex's friend was charged with capital murder and sentenced to 20 years in a Mississippi state prison. 21 years old and ruined his entire life in one night. Story 2. A buddy from high school blew through a stop sign and hit a couple of motorcyclists, killing them both. He didn't stop to render aid and fled the scene. He was busted for vehicular manslaughter and spent 12+ years in prison. He's lucky he can work for his dad, because where he lives now is not kind to felons trying to rehabilitate. Story 3. Friend's son was with his recently engaged fiancée who had a serious nut allergy. They were driving not far from Bendigo. They stopped off at a cafe to buy sandwiches. The woman running the cafe assured him there were no nuts anywhere near the sandwiches, so they bought them, then went on their way. Driving out away from town, she was nibbling on the sandwiches when she struggled to breathe. He stopped the car, got out, figured what was going on, went to the back of the car to get her EpiPen, which he struggled to find, but by the time he did find it, she was dead. A couple of weeks after the funeral, he got in his car, drove it back to the stretch of roadside where she died, put his foot down on the accelerator and deliberately aimed his car at a power pole. He'd left his mum a note. Addendum. For anyone wishing to blame someone for this, I need to make it clear that the contamination turned out to be an accidental tainting of a bread batch. The cafe owner did not know about it, nor did the bakery until this incident. Story 4. Stood in the wrong place. He was stood in a bar minding his own business and a fight broke out. He caught an accidental blow to the back of the head and caught his head on a wall on the way down. He never woke up. Story 5. More like a day horribly altered my life. I was a teacher and coach. For a field trip, the principal could not afford 2 buses. So I had to walk about 10 girls to the field trip location, and back to school, while the one bus was filled with the rest of the junior high students and faculty. About a mile each way. I chose the girls of my team because they would listen to me outdoors, unlike lots of middle school kids. While crossing the street in the crosswalk, with the walk signal in our favor, all the kids went first, and like girls they clumped together and chatting while walking. I noticed a woman made a left turn into our crosswalk and never saw us as she tried to accelerate to beat an oncoming car. I knew she was going to run right through the girls. I pushed the kids forward, very forcefully. Most of the girls fell onto the pavement in front of other vehicles waiting at their red light. They were badly scraped up, like road rash from me pushing them. But no hospitals or doctors were needed for their scrapes. I don't remember the impact. I remember seeing a Pontiac symbol between the headlights. I came to, and I was in a whole different lane, and facing where I had just come from. I could not get up. They say my body went up the car, and off the driver's side, tearing the side mirror off the car and breaking her windshield. Horror and sobbing from my student athletes. The girls raised me onto a backboard when the ambulance came, which must have been traumatic. Now, 20 years later, I am still an ambulatory wheelchair user. Can't teach or coach. Can't work at a desk. I have chronic pain. Yes, my life can be really sucky, but I would not change what I did that day. When I get low emotionally from all my limitations, I remember those girls. I watch them go to college, get married, grow into mothers, and hold impressive jobs in their fields. And when they show a photo on FB of their happy moment, it recharges me to know they're safe, healthy, and happy. And it reaffirms my decision to save them from harm. Story 6. I distantly know somebody who tried to cross the US-Canada border without declaring greater than $10,000 in cash, which led to them searching all his stuff and finding no porn on his computer. He's in jail. Story 7. Guys got drunk in HS, drove off the highway, didn't make the turn at 90 miles per hour, 5 dead. Story 8. Guy the first knew in uni was inebriated and decided to try and clear a very tall spiked wrought iron fence. He impaled his balls and did not get to keep them. Story 9. He had just turned 19. Summer after senior year. Dad owns a very lucrative lumber sales and construction company. He got a brand new truck for graduation, and was going to start his job after summer ended with his dad. Trained to be a foreman, and basically be set for life on a path to retire extremely comfortably by the age of 55. He decided to take a bunch of pills and ran a red light. T-boned a car, killing the driver instantly and crippling the passenger for life. He got off with vehicular manslaughter because his dad forked out big money to get the charges lessened. He served 13 years and got out last year. He just walks around the town now because he can't get work, own a license or vehicle. Story 10. Pushed his girlfriend down a flight of stairs in front of almost everyone he knew seconds after she announced to everyone that she was pregnant with his kid. I ain't sure if she miscarried or if she just decided not to have that psycho's kid, but he spent a few years in prison over it and he ain't welcome anywhere no more. She walks with a cane at 30. Story 11. Had a friend from high school who decided to opt out by jumping off the roof of his mom's house. He landed in such a way that he survived, but is now paralyzed from the chest down, as in, can't even breathe for himself and fully reliant on home health aides and his mom, whom he despised and named as the reason he wanted out of life. It's fair that she was a full-blown heroin addict at this point and was a shit show herself. Story 12. My friend's brother got too drunk, got violent. Cops came and he fought them. Once restrained, he started threatening to find and kill their children. Never seemed to get his life back on track after that. Story 13. A 19-year-old guy in Sydney ate a slug for a dare. Got rat lungworm disease. Went into a coma for 18 months, woke up a vegetable confined to wheelchair needing 24-hour care. Died about 10 years later. From eating a single slug. Story 14. Tried to kill themselves by jumping off a bridge, survived, paralyzed from neck down. Story 15. Worked in Seattle Airport and a co-worker decided to take his own life by stealing an airplane, fly it in loops around the Pacific Northwest airspace while being chased by the Air Force until finally going nose down. Story 16. A week ago, my little sister slipped on the ice getting out of her car and hit her head. She didn't think much of it when she had a pounding headache later, figuring she just whacked herself good. Her friend told her to just sit down and take it easy until she started slurring her words roughly 10 hours after the fall. They called an ambulance for her, but she was going into cardiac arrest. Turns out she'd stopped taking her blood thinners she was supposed to be on for clotting issues. The headache wasn't the fall, it was the clot in her leg cutting off blood to the brain. At the age of 26, she never recovered and leaves behind a 4-year-old and 2-year-old. Story 17. He got drunk, got in his car, drove 90 miles per hour, missed a red light and killed my niece and 3 other people. He's been in prison since 2009 and still has 6 years to go, as he plead out to 4 counts of manslaughter. Story 18. My daughter's middle school teacher exchanged nudes with a 14-year-old on Discord across state lines. Story 19. Some kid in our senior year of high school pulled the fire alarm every day. He was getting away with it for a while. The school had town officials and the chief of the fire department and police come in and talk about the dangers. The town would send trucks and be without them if there was another emergency. None of that worked. When they offered a reward, the kid's friends ratted him out. His family had to pay for all those calls. He was expelled from school and didn't graduate. Story 20. A local dude was sucking the toes of his 14-year-old stepdaughter while she slept. She was awake but too scared to say anything. Mom eventually found out and shit hit the fan. Story 21. My dad once saw a patient who was a seemingly normal, well-adjusted family man in his early 40s with no major health issues and in good physical shape. He was in town for a business trip and had suddenly gone blind. Come to find out, while out with his colleagues, he had tried coke for the first time in his life. It was cut with a something that created a blockage in his optic nerve and now he's blind forever. This caused him to lose his job. He had a wife and kids and was the sole breadwinner. Story 22. Kid down the street had his best friend over, and his friend, being a 12 to 13-year-old boy, was being a total dickhead. Kid picks up a shotgun his brother left lying around in the dining room and aimed at friend. Friend taunted him. Kid pulled the trigger and filled his friend's head full of buckshot. 2 families instantly devastated. Kid went to jail. I occasionally see the friend when I go out for a walk. He's a grown-up now, but is intellectually maybe 4 to 5 years old, and will be taken care of by family for the rest of his life. Story 23. Dude several years our junior, on the fringe of the friend group, was spiraling into depression. Decided to end it WA shotgun. Didn't get the angle right. Blew his jaw and face off. Literally. It's not for nothing that I've said ever since, there are worse things than dying. Story 24. 3 guys in high school decided to speed on the back roads after practice. Lost control, driver was decapitated, passenger, who was being scouted, had severe brain damage and unable to walk, eat, etc. on his own, and the third may have walked away, but for the rest of his life will have to live with the trauma. Great bunch of guys, just heartbreaking. Story 25. A friend of my parents was a good family man who loved his family. One day he was playing with his toddler and was playfully tossing her on the bed. She would get back up giggling and he would toss her again. In one of the tosses he threw her a bit too far and she hit a bedpost. She lived but became bedbound, unable to even talk. Not quite vegetaable but close. He went to jail on child abuse. Lost his wife, his job and his little girl would never be the same. The guilt was so much he ended it as soon as he could. Story 26.30 plus year district renowned high school band director retires from teaching. High-end retirement party with a good amount of past students and colleagues celebrating his career. Daughter just had her first child. He's seemingly a happy grandfather with a happy marriage and happy life. 1 year later he gets caught talking to a 13-year-old girl who turned out to be law enforcement undercover. The next 20 years in federal prison. Story 27. My cousin got back into drugs, after having his life together and doing well for a long time. He started losing his shit. Apparently he had some underlying schizophrenia they think the drug use brought out. He took a rifle to a store parking lot and shot a guy, ran over his body then had a police standoff. Said he shot the president or some crazy shit like that. Needless to say he ruined his life, took another and destroyed another family in the process. Story 28. Old co-worker went to Vegas, felt really good about his odds due to the liquor and ended up betting his entire life savings on roulette and lost. He ended up losing his house, his wife, kids, and from what I've seen he lives in a tiny apartment and works a min-wage job. Thank you for watching.